therapists say everything's gonna be alright.
The following is paid for by IMIC Incorporated.
The Cure with Aimee Cabo is brought to you by IMIC Research. Life can bring many difficult situations: domestic violence, addictions, poverty, and even sexual abuse by your loved ones. Welcome, Aimee Cabo and The Cure.
And thanks for joining us today. I'm your host, Aimee Cabo, and this is The Cure. I'm joined by Dr. Boris Nikolov, my partner in work and in life. We created this show as a safe place to show that there is hope after going through difficulties, no matter what type, or if you're suffering chronically. I'm trying to use testimonies to that effect and inviting professionals and inspirational speakers to help with suggestions. When you stop worrying about the big things because you believe God will provide, you tend to focus more on becoming better day by day. So being kind has become very important to me. I have learned that it's important to be kind, especially when the opposite is expected. God said, "Love each other as I love you." And I believe the secret to life is as simple as being kind to all of God's creation, His people, animals, nature, land, and sea. And I believe then we can all live in harmony. With God in my life, I take care of myself and focus on others, rather than focusing on myself, taking care of others, but neglecting to take care of myself. Most of the time, love, unconditional love and understanding resolves all issues. After all, love is the answer to every problem. But what if the problem is something we don't understand and the solution seems deemed for failure, impossible, or it has no end? As in a family member that doesn't respond normally because of a non-curable chronic medical condition called Alzheimer's, among other conditions such as TBI. That's when kindness is mostly needed. For me, understanding helps me to be kind. So today, I want to talk more about Alzheimer's disease, how to diagnose it, treat it, and how to help people living with it and their families as they are suffering watching their dad or mom become more helpless in front of them. And today's guest is Dr. Juana Pelegrino, who is going to help us understand more about the chronic condition, Alzheimer's disease, and among others, because these are diseases that are chronic. They have no end. Dr. Juana is a trained clinical psychologist working with patients with memory loss at the Neuroscience Clinic in Miami. Dr. Pelegrino, thank you for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It is really a privilege.
Thank you. Dr. Pelegrino, can you tell us what is Alzheimer's disease for those of us that are not familiar with it?
Alzheimer's disease is a progressive, irreversible disease of the brain that destroys memory and thinking skills and eventually carries on to daily activity until you need full-time care. I have experienced it both ways, as a professional and as the daughter of a patient with Alzheimer's. Wow. So it can really be very difficult and very stressful for the family.
And this is, I would believe that somebody suffering with Alzheimer's needs a full-time caregiver.
Yes.
They're not able to do for themselves. And I've also heard of dementia, and I know I get a little confused between the two. The difference between Alzheimer's and dementia. I only know that they're both progressive.
Dementia is an umbrella term to describe loss of memory, loss of thinking, behavioral problems or issues. But it's an umbrella term, and there are many dementias. There's over 200 types. And you can have them mixed. You can have Alzheimer's and, let's say, vascular dementia. You can have a combination of dementias. It's not only specific, I have one and that's it. You have one and you will get another. Or you could get another, not you will.
But both of them come with the same symptoms, right? Such as memory loss, inability to take care of themselves, maybe cognitive impairment.
Correct, but one is let's say Alzheimer's is gradual, and vascular dementia is more progressive.
Neither of them have a cure.
Correct.
So far. Maybe later.
So hopefully, with research, we should.
And when you describe someone to be have mild cognitive impairment, is it possible for them to have mild cognitive impairment absent of dementia or Alzheimer's disease?
Because mild cognitive impairment is like a borderline condition between what is normal in the aging process and what could eventually become a dementia or an Alzheimer's.
Okay.
So mild cognitive impairment is the first stage in which patients that have Alzheimer maybe are beginning to have. So it presents with mild symptoms of the same symptoms of the dementia, but in a much lower level.
That's correct.
So you were the daughter of a patient of dementia.
Correct.
And could you just paint a picture for us of the kind of things that we could expect in a patient with dementia, and what's the best way to handle this? Because obviously it's a lifetime commitment. It's not something you're just gonna get over, survive, and start over. This is something that's forever.
You don't survive it because the patient does eventually pass away. And for us, it was my mother and my sister who took care of my father. We had eventually had hospice for him. And it's very stressful on the family because you know that no matter what you do and no matter where you go and no matter what test or what medication there is, it's progressive and there is no resolution to the problem.
And if they have cognitive impairment, I would believe that they have memory problems as well. Was there a point in time that your father did not know who you were?
Yes.
Or his caretakers?
Yes. When it first started for him, he would say to me, I know that by the way that you're behaving, you're not seeing what I'm seeing.
So in that case, do you confirm their idea, even though it's not reality, or do you go along? I mean, you don't want to upset them. What's the correct thing to do in this case?
I would tell my father is, I don't see it. I don't see what you see, but I understand that you're seeing something. There's something there for you.
But I believe that you see it.
But I believe that you see it.
Okay, so it's an affirmation.
Because it's too frustrating to tell them, no, I don't see it, or no, I don't believe you. Then you're just going to add to the stress of them not knowing what's really going on. And he eventually forgot who I actually... He didn't really totally forget, because when you would ask him, who am I? He would say, my heart.
In my heart. Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah, it can be very difficult. I've never had anyone in my life that has had dementia. I just can't imagine what it's like for the family, for the people.
It's honestly very, very stressful, and it's very stressful for the family, because you even argue between us of what would be the correct method of treatment or what's the next step, and there's really nothing that you can really do. His mother also had Alzheimer's. Yeah, I honestly believe his mother had what is called the familial Alzheimer's, which she got when she was young.
So there's a genetic component.
There's two types. There's a sporadic
For no
Alzheimer's,
reason.
which is
Spontaneous.
correct.
Wow.
Which is the 95% of Alzheimer's out there today, and 5% is genetic. So out of the chromosomes, chromosome 1, 14, 19, and 21 are the ones that carry the allele for the Alzheimer's. And since it's linked to chromosome 21, most people with Down syndrome eventually get Alzheimer's.
Wow, that's incredible. And is there a way to find out if you have the predisposition to have Alzheimer's? And would it even make a difference to know ahead of time?
I think it would make a difference because you at least can get ready for it. You may want to make a video, a history of your life, explaining your childhood, your schools, your friends, what happened, because you eventually forget this. There's no way of communicating it. So as a record of what happened to you, if you knew that this is going to happen to you, you could keep track of what happened to your life and through your life.
Right, but it's not a clear cut, like, for example, that you're going to get it, right? So
No, it's a predisposition.
Right. So you can test your genetic predisposition, but it's not necessarily you will get that disease.
Correct.
Even if you carry the gene?
Even if you carry the gene, you might not get sick from Alzheimer's ever.
So you might just get worried for nothing.
You might just get worried for nothing. Or if you want to know everything around you, then maybe you should check it out more. There is a lot of companies that do it right now, right? For example, you can do the genetic testing through 23andMe. I think is the cheapest way to figure out whether you carry the gene.
Yeah, they also have the heredity.
Other companies that do that?
Heredity, I forget. Heredity.
Or through your doctor's office.
Yes, that will work.
And maybe it could be a peace of mind if you find out you don't carry the gene.
Right.
But probably it's a good idea if it runs in your family to find out if there's a possibility, at least even considering to think about children and whether it's going to be passed down or not. You know.
That's an alternative. Personally, I wouldn't want to know if I have it.
Yeah, we should do it like an individual choice. It's not like your doctor, oh, you need to go check it out.
I
No,
don't
we
wanna
shouldn't do that, right?
No, I don't want to know.
Okay, well, supposing one parent has the gene for Alzheimer's and the other parent doesn't, what are the chances of the child being born with it? Is it 50-50?
No, it's much less.
It's much less.
Okay. How much less?
I honestly don't know the mathematics.
You would have to do a Punnett square and figure out what gene is where in the parent and calculate in the sporadics.
Okay, well then please tell me it's a recessive gene and
I
it's
think
not
it would
dominant.
be insignificant.
Yeah,
The
it is a
chances are
recessive.
insignificant because it's 95%. So it would be a 5% chance. It would be something insignificant calculating.
So it's a recessive gene, something that doesn't usually come out. It's not dominant. It's not what you would normally see.
No,
That's good.
No.
That's good to know because it is something that you have to live with for the rest of your life. And from what I'm hearing is that the best thing you can do is to be there for the person, be supportive, and be a good listener. I think there's nothing you can do for someone better than to listen to them and to show that you care. And even though you may not agree with them, let them know you're okay with what they believe and what they think. But also, I think it's important, besides taking care of the person who has Alzheimer's, the caretakers, they carry a big burden. And it's important for the caretakers to take care of themselves.
Yes, like for example, you can go to a support group, right? There is support groups.
There's support groups.
Through your hospitals around you.
There's also support groups through the Alzheimer's Foundation.
There you go.
Well, when we return, we'll see what kind of things we can do because it's much harder for someone that's living with a chronic condition. It's much harder for them because it's never over for them.
I feel that it's harder for the family than it is for the patient because
Right, that's what I meant. The family, it's never over. Right, because I don't think the patient really knows what's going on, right?
Well,
right.
In the beginning, for the patient, it's very frustrating not to remember things. But when he gets more and more demented, then he doesn't or she doesn't really realize what's going on. But in the beginning stages, it's really frustrating for the patient. Sometimes even leads to depression, aggressive behavior, and other situations.
And now we continue with Aimee Cabo and The Cure on 880 The Biz.
Welcome back, and thanks for listening. You're listening to The Cure with your host, Aimee Cabo. If this is your first time, today we have Dr. Juana Pelegrino, and we are talking about how to live with Alzheimer's disease as well as other chronic conditions. Dr. Pelegrino, we spoke about Alzheimer's, that it's not very common. I had another question for you. The disease, does it only show up in old age, or could it show up in younger adults as well?
It shows up as early as in the 30s.
Wow.
It could show up as early as in the 30s.
So it's not a disease of an old person only. Oh, somebody's calling.
Aimee?
Yes. Hi.
Hi,
Hello.
my name is Isabel, and I wanted to comment on our experience. My dad was diagnosed less than a year ago, and he started by stuttering, and anyways, he declined very, very quickly. It's been very difficult at first for my dad because he called himself useless, but now it's not anymore. He seems oblivious most of the time. Even when he has an accident to go to the bathroom, he's not even aware that this is happening. So it's mostly for the family.
Thank you so much for calling. I really appreciate it. I think Dr. Birdie Pellegrini would be best answering this because she understands exactly where you're coming from. She lived it.
I think that you're correct. It is worse for the family. I suggest that a support group or a counselor at this point would be ideal for you. It is, no matter what you do, it's not going to be, you're not going to feel that you succeeded. And I think that is the most trying part of being a caregiver.
Mm-hmm.
Feeling helpless.
Feeling helpless is feeling
Yes.
of being helpless.
Yes, that's got to be I know that's
Something
an awful
that
feeling.
Something that we've tried to do, and it raises attention, is we try to laugh a lot.
Nice.
When he does something, or we'll laugh with him, or even if I forget something, I'll make a joke about it. But we try to laugh a lot, and that really helps.
Does he like music?
Yes, he does. And it was something that he really liked is he has his special movies that, like, for example, the 100-Foot Journey, the movie. He loves it because I think he sees himself in the character. But
Nice.
we'll watch a lot of those old movies that he's really liked in the past, and that seems to he seems to really like that. Or Beatles music,
Most likely it's the
music that he
part
really likes.
that he remembers. So he sees it and remembers it because it's stored in his long-term memory.
So he can remember that.
He can remember that.
Wow.
Yeah, that's the thing with Alzheimer's. You start forgetting recent events and recent things. The old-time events, like
long-term memory.
Long-term memory stays intact
Yeah.
in the beginning.
Wow. I didn't know that.
Mm-hmm.
But thank you for calling. Please stay strong.
Well, I can give you some suggestions because I know that you're doing what's best for your parent, your father. I believe it's your father. And
Yes.
I believe that you're doing what's best for him, helping him feel comfortable doing the things that you know that he'll enjoy, such as listening to music or watching movies and things like that. But also understand that it's got to be a little bit difficult for you. And I believe that it's important also to take time for yourself. Make sure you take time to listen to music, to meditate, maybe exercise. There's many different things that you can do. A support group would be helpful. And don't be afraid to ask for help. It's okay. We're here for each other. Sometimes when we take too much but on our own, we can feel overwhelmed. And so try to set yourself up to where you're going to feel good and that you're not going to feel overwhelmed by making sure you take time for yourself as well. I think that's important.
Very well.
Okay.
Thank you for
so
calling.
much. All right. Bye-bye.
And God bless. So we were talking about Alzheimer's being a hereditary disease, and the caller that just called in, he seems like a very sweet Alzheimer's person. I don't know about Alzheimer's, but I know about TBI, traumatic brain injury, and I know that can come with a lot of outbursts of anger and I don't know if that's the same for Alzheimer's. Do they
Alzheimer's
have
has it as well. They have anger issues and agitation.
easily agitated,
They're very easily agitated.
and maybe they don't understand you, so they don't have any choice but to get agitated.
Sometimes it's the only way they know how to express themselves.
And so, what's the best way to deal with that? How do you?
Well, definitely
calm
don't
them
fight
down?
it. Definitely don't fight it. Yeah.
Well,
Well,
but
it's like you try to calm them down, but they're sometimes in such an agitated state that you don't calm them down right away.
and it's okay. Just
It's
give them their
okay.
time and just make sure they're safe, right? Stay
That's
next
the
to
key.
them.
They make sure that they're safe.
Okay, I'm just guessing.
but-
I don't know. I've never dealt with Alzheimer's, but I could tell you about TBI. Definitely, I can tell you about that. And so, besides the outburst of anger and the mild cognitive impairment or that progresses where they forget everything and then not being able to take care of themselves, I think Boris mentioned depression. Is suicide something we have to be concerned about in an Alzheimer's patient?
I would keep a close watch because they still have enough, when they're depressed, they still have enough memory of themselves to be able to commit suicide. So if they realize they're going through this, or they know that they may have Alzheimer's because of a previous test they've done or something like this, they could very well commit suicide.
How about, can they get to a point where they just walk out the door of the house and maybe run across the
Yes.
street and get hit by a car?
Yes, very, very commonly that can happen. That's
So
why you need to put
basically have to observe an Alzheimer's person
non-stop.
like if it's a child, right?
Correct. It's
Okay.
24/7 job.
Yes.
It's a 24/7 job.
So you know what? The caretakers deserve an award.
They certainly do.
That's amazing. They really do. God bless them. That's amazing. I had, well, Boris and I had our own challenges. We never had an Alzheimer's family member, but we came into another chronic condition that's a lifetime commitment. And this is normally caused by accident or by injury. It's the traumatic brain injury. It happened to my daughter on Valentine's 2016. Thank God she survived. She's alive. And most of what you can see, the physical injuries, are no longer there. So what she's left with is what you're not able to see. How effective? I know that you can give medication for depression, for example. Can you give medication for traumatic brain injury, and how effective is it?
There is medications. I believe that they're basically treated with antidepressants.
Yeah.
Mood stabilizers.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, mood.
Right. And there is also some medication that are probably not approved specifically for traumatic brain injury, but have good effect on people with agitation due to traumatic brain injury, which is some medication like Nudexa, but obviously consult your doctor if you have that case.
Well, what do you do if you have a case like ours, where your adult daughter, you can't force an adult to do anything?
The best thing
But-
is therapy.
Well, what if there's denial? She doesn't believe there's something wrong with her, which was
Would you
difficult
go-
to get her disabilities because she thinks she's okay.
Would you go through the courts and get a guardian for her, or a surrogate for her?
I didn't know that was an option.
I believe it's an option with traumatic brain injury. Because they have issues that in the long run they may not be able to do their finances or take care of themselves, and they would need somebody to do it. So you would have to legally get custody of the adult.
Yes, because they're
Yeah, but then what are you
unable
going to
take
do?
care of themselves.
Put handcuffs on her?
Right. I mean,
You
really,
don't
how do you do it?
You don't have to completely take everything from her, like saying, no, you can't do this or you can't do that. I'm your guardian. You can be the guardian and then just sort of guide her.
I think that we need to emphasize on therapy and approach to different things. Force, how you react to somebody with force, it doesn't really.
No, basically.
No, I wasn't thinking about force.
No, I know, but
Really.
this is kind
with our daughter, I have to convince her that living with us, it's what she wants.
Yeah.
It can never be what I want. It can never be what he wants or you want. It's got to be what she wants. And in the meantime, I have to support her with what she wants. I want to be her friend, not her enemy, because then she won't turn to me when she's in trouble. She won't turn to me for help. And it doesn't matter how I see it. Her perception is what counts.
Yeah.
It's true, but what happens, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how old you are. You still sometimes see your parents as authoritative. Like for me, instance, with my mom, I don't listen to her all the time.
No?
I don't listen to Boris all the time.
I don't listen to my mom all the time.
I listen to you all the time, Aimee.
Fibber. Okay.
Okay.
But yeah, I really want to talk more about this because I'm sure my daughter's not the only one with a traumatic brain injury. A lot of accidents happen.
Well, these things also applies for people with Alzheimer's, because
It's almost the same symptoms, right?
when they don't start not be able to take care of themselves, probably that's what needs to happen. Appointing a guardian of sorts, or deem the person incapable through the courts.
But isn't it
Unfortunately.
easier for an Alzheimer's patient because they're not aware? They get to a point where they're not even aware what's going on or aware of themselves. Whereas a TBI patient, a traumatic brain injury patient, they're completely, they're
It is
alert.
a different situation, yeah.
They're alert and they know what's going on.
But they have a healthy brain. Their brain was healthy. They
Before.
were injured before.
Right.
Right.
An Alzheimer's brain is not a healthy brain.
It's okay. That's
a difference.
Okay.
Even through the injury itself, the brain can create plasticity around the injury and get a lot of the function back.
Right.
Nice.
So it doesn't mean that, and it happens through time. It's not just.
It's not a 1 month thing.
It's
Yeah,
not a
fair.
1 month thing. It happens through time. So she can gain a lot of her functions back. It doesn't necessarily mean.
So
No,
it
she's
doesn't.
she's doing a lot of things.
Well, all the physical
Right.
functions.
And
so
therapy is
doesn't-
gonna help.
It doesn't have to be progressive.
No, not for her.
Nice. See, I didn't know that either. But for those that are tuning in, you're listening to The Cure with your host, Aimee Cabo. We're live every Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern on your radio, AimeeCabo.com. It's going to be a podcast later on, and you can always ask Alexa to play it. We will continue talking about this after this break.
Love is the answer, God is the cure, reveals from a very sincere and honest position Aimee Cabo's life, a warrior who didn't give up and achieved the dream of her life. You can get to know more about her and her story on www.godisthecure.com or buying her book on Amazon.com.
If you suffer from persistent depression, call Neurosciences Medical Clinic to schedule a free consultation for new effective FDA-approved treatments such as intranasal ketamine or Neurostar TMS, a no-medication treatment. Neurosciences Medical Clinic. Call now, 786-600-7005. Neurosciences Medical Clinic, 786-600-7005, 786-600-7005.
And now we continue with Aimee Cabo and The Cure on 880 The Biz.
Hi, we're back. Thanks for joining us. You're tuning in to The Cure with your host, Aimee Cabo. We're live every Friday at 2 p.m. Remember, our call-in number is 305-541-2350. The lines are open. You're free to call. 305-541-2350.
We're talking about Alzheimer's, and I would like to continue with Dr. Pellegrini. So we talked about some of the symptoms of Alzheimer, but maybe we can go a little bit deeper into the stages and what symptoms go into which stage, doctor?
Okay. Stage 1 is usually before you're diagnosed. It lasts about 2 to 4 years. And it goes from short-term memory loss, difficulty in concentration, poor judgment, hesitancy in doing things that came usually to you or easily to you. Sometimes problems with finding the expression you want to or word you want to say. Some perception changes may occur in personality, perceptible changes in anxiety. Anxiety in what's going to happen with you, and difficulty in decision making. The second stage is usually lasts from 2 to 10 years, and it's following diagnosis. And it's repeating statements. Real difficulty remembering friends and friends' family and their names. Restlessness. Fear of getting into the bathtub. Perceptual motor problems. Increased difficulty in organizing thoughts. Problems in writing, reading, and expressing yourself with numbers. And more difficult locating the right words. Suspiciousness and irritability. Hearing and seeing things that are not there. Stage 3 is considered the terminal phase. Doesn't recognize the self, unable to take care of the self, difficulty swallowing, sleeps longer and more fitfully. Bizarre or disturbed behavior, such as constant crying, hitting, biting, screaming, and grunting noises. Loss of control over bladder and bowel. Abusive, angry, aggressive, demanding behavior. Bizarre sexual behavior. So those are the 3 stages of Alzheimer's.
That's really very difficult. I didn't know that it entailed so much. I love that person that called in because she seemed to have stayed positive despite the fact that her father has Alzheimer's disease. And that's a lot to deal with. Is there how is it treated? Is there
sorry to interrupt you. Just before we continue, I wanted to say that the number for the Alzheimer's Association, for example, is 1-800-272-3900. Or for people that are looking for additional help for the caregivers, for example, there is a National Caregiving Foundation for the people that take care of the patients with Alzheimer. 1-800-930-1357. And yes, you were right, Aimee, because the issue is with all these symptoms, they can be due to many different things, not only for Alzheimer's. So your question to as far as how is it diagnosed, it's very important.
Right. Whenever you see any behavior, I guess that's not normal, you're going to try to want to look into it. But for the Alzheimer's person, it's a very sad prognosis, actually. And so how do we keep this patient comfortable? What kind of treatment is there available?
But how do you diagnose it, no?
What's the efficacy of this treatment? How does it work? What does it do for them?
First, you would have the diagnosis. There are many ways of diagnosing, but so you would do psychological evaluation, you would do scans and neurological evaluations. But to totally determine if the brain has the amyloid plaque or the tau tangles, you would have to do a biopsy after death.
Well, before we get there, maybe we can do something else. Okay, wait. I think that there is.
You have about a 90% chance of knowing what it is through the scans and
right.
an MRI.
Right.
So before you really get to the autopsy at the end, there are other things. But
yeah, I think that the most definitive diagnosis is the biopsy. That's correct. But then there is other diagnosis methods that we can use to help diagnose that condition while the patient has it. So starting with memory tests. As you probably do a lot of memory tests that distinguish at the different level.
To pick up the mild symptoms, that is something that's not
in the
obvious
beginning, right,
to the eye. But what I was talking about is, okay, so you have Alzheimer's. You know the person has Alzheimer's.
But the thing
is person is
exhibiting
symptoms.
Right.
How do you keep that person comfortable? What is there available?
But I wanted to go a little bit more into the diagnosis because, see, there is the availability of a PET scan to determine whether these deposits of amyloids are available. So you need to go to the doctor And that was just recently, unless you go to a clinical research study in which it will be more clear how to do it and the doctors there will know more. But up to recently wasn't even available to anybody to go do a PET scan. Now it is. There is a couple of different isotopes that can be used. One is a little bit more expensive and more specific for Alzheimer's. But to me, we're not really sure whether the Alzheimer is due to the deposits of amyloids. I mean, this is still under question. So it might be deposits of tau, what do you call it, peptides? Tau
peptides.
Tau peptides. So those things can be found in a PET scanner. And after that, it can be done a lumbar puncture to diagnose it.
Well, if you can get to the source, you can figure out the cure.
Right.
In the meantime, how do you take care of the symptom?
Right.
There's medications like donazepam or Namenda, Effexor, and I believe there's another one that treats the symptoms, but doesn't cure the illness.
Right, but does it at least help them with the irritability,
Yes, it
the
does help them.
anger, the aggression, the biting, and those things?
It treats the symptoms.
Oh,
those,
good.
Those medications treat the
That's good
symptoms.
to know.
Right, but it doesn't really help. So now
No,
there is a lot of pharmaceutical companies that look for the treatment of Alzheimer, and the first one that is going to find it, believe me, I want stocks from that one. But anyway, there is probably a lot, 10, 15 pharmaceutical companies that do research studies on different molecules.
That's correct.
And some of them, unfortunately, found out that their molecule didn't work and even stopped the studies. We've been participating in various studies, and the pharmaceutical companies gets to a certain stage and then discover that there is no effect and discontinue it. But there is other pharmaceutical companies, other scientists that work on it. And I'm pretty confident that soon, with the help of FDA, because FDA is trying to help to promote faster approval for certain drugs that prove that have benefit with patients with Alzheimer. So the moment that somebody finds it, that's going to have fast track approval and it's going to go to the pharmacist faster than the normal process of 5 years.
It's true.
Let's see when that happens.
Because they do have expedited
Right.
approval for certain
For
drugs
certain more
and
severe, more, how do you call it? Important conditions.
conditions.
More severe conditions, yes, I would assume that's very important. Have you ever come across, I know that, I mean, it's my belief that whether it's an infection or a condition or an illness, it evolves. They get smart. I think they're outsmarting our medications. So we're constantly having to come up with new medications, and we're constantly having to get smarter, invent more.
Yeah, that's so true.
And have you come across something close to that, something that will be very effective?
In a couple of our studies that we participated, actually the patients were feeling very, very well, better. So I'm pretty confident. Well, I think I'm bound by some confidentialities, so I can't really say which ones.
You can't give us the medication name at least?
No.
How about the medication name?
No, I can't. But there is a
Okay.
couple of pharmaceutical companies that to me are very close to finding something.
I think so too. They also have stem cell research.
Well, that's another issue that people are working. You're right.
There's stem cell research, and Longeveron is a company here, a sponsor here in South Florida, which we should be very proud of, that is working on stem cell research for Alzheimer's.
Nice, because, I'm a really big believer of that. I believe that God gave us everything that we needed.
Right.
On earth, I mean, even with the placenta of a child, we're not aware of it. There's in nature, within us, I think we have everything that we need. And it's just a matter of time before we discover a cure, I believe.
Right.
I believe
have
so
faith.
too. I think and I don't think it's too far away because there's so much promise with the current pharmaceutical products now.
Right. To me, the problem is that we really don't know what is the cause of the Alzheimer's disease.
Once they know the cause,
Yeah.
they're going to find the cure.
Yeah, faster, yeah. Because the concept still is that is due to the deposits of amyloids, plaques. But then we have other theories recently that I hear that say that it's not. So they had a couple of drugs that actually reduced the amyloid deposits. But then patient didn't improve.
So basically, it's a lot of you live and learn.
Research,
Trial
a
and
lot of
error.
research.
Yes.
Maybe it didn't work because the damage was already done.
Maybe, see, that's another issue, right? That's why they started inviting patients with earlier stage into the studies, the so-called mild cognitive impairment, so you don't have a lot of damage to the brain.
To see if earlier treatment helps.
Can reverse it.
Or can reverse it.
Yeah.
Really? Is that
Yeah.
even possible?
But that's the idea.
Well, yes, it can reverse it because if it's early enough, we spoke a little bit earlier about the plasticity of the brain. The brain learns how to cure itself through plasticity, creating new connections. And if there's enough healthy brain left, there can be some stopping the illness from progressing,
Right, or slowing it
just
down.
leaving it there, and then the
Nipping
person
at the bud.
yes,
Okay.
that's perfect.
Nip it at the butt. Okay, perfect. I like that. That's good. That's good to know.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And, because it's really hard. I can't imagine being that person that has to deal with that. I know that with my daughter, it's a different situation, but the symptoms are very similar. And this one will not take medication and will not go to therapy. So it becomes difficult. But what I did for myself to be able to handle it better and learn how to say wise words and use psychology and all that, I use prayer. Really, I depend on God. There's nothing else but that. Because, people can say, oh, think positive. Oh, ignore the negative. It's not always that easy.
They're not living with it.
Right.
They don't deal with the issues of the anger, the deception.
It can be very
the
hard.
helplessness that you feel through somebody that has an illness that is progressing, and you know that there's no cure.
Like with my daughter, it's an awful feeling as a mother, feeling like I cannot help her. The only way I can help her is to be of a friend to her and to pray for her. But it's very difficult. I don't know. You tell me. You're the doctor. How does a traumatic brain injury person? I know that an Alzheimer's person does not come to terms and realizes there's something wrong with him, right? How about a traumatic brain injury person? Do they eventually realize they need help?
Yes, I think they can.
Okay, but the Alzheimer's person cannot.
No, with the traumatic brain injury, it all depends on how much damage was done to the brain and what part of the brain.
Okay.
So with Alzheimer's, it's the whole brain. So
I see.
that's the difference. What part of the brain was damaged is key to helping her, and how much of the brain was damaged.
Yeah, that would be important. And, well, guys, it's been really wonderful talking to you guys. It's been wonderful. It's hard to believe we've come again to the end of the show. Thank you guys for listening. Thank you for your questions. Thank you, Dr. Juana Pelegrino, for being on the show. For more information on Dr. Pelegrino or the useful numbers that Boris mentioned earlier about Alzheimer's support, it can be found on aimeecabo.com under guests. This has been The Cure. I'm your host, Aimee Cabo. Thanks for listening. Check my website, aimeecabo.com, for previous shows.
Love is the answer, God is the cure, reveals from a very sincere and honest position Aimee Cabo's life, a warrior who didn't give up and achieved the dream of her life. You can get to know more about her and her story on www.godisthecure.com or buying her book on Amazon.com.
If you suffer from persistent depression, call Neurosciences Medical Clinic to schedule a free consultation for new effective FDA-approved treatments such as intranasal ketamine or NeuroStar TMS, a no-medication treatment. Neurosciences Medical Clinic. Call now, 786-600-7005. Neurosciences Medical Clinic, 786-600-7005, 786-600-7005.
The Cure with Aimee Cabo was brought to you by IMIC Research, 786-310-7477 or www.godisthecure.com. Tune in every Friday at 2 p.m. for The Cure with Aimee Cabo, right here on 880 The Biz.